Gnosia is finally back after a week-long break, and what an episode to return to. There's a side of me that's a little miffed because this is our first time, I think, so far where we've had a multiple episode story arc. Yes, the whole story is like a through line through the entire episodes, but this is the first time where this first episode's the setup. We're setting up to what seems like really big reveals coming up, and yes, it's sort of seemingly going towards the direction I kind of assumed. I'm just waiting. I actually assumed that Yuriko at the end of this episode was going to bring up Levi. We all know it's going to be Levi. What's the one thing that's always around with all of these situations? What is at the core of it? What is at the center of it? And where is she currently standing? It's Levi. We all know it's going to be Levi. But this was a really good setup, though. I think the very first half of this episode's really around, trying to help Setsu, sort of Yuri, relating in a way. Because we just kind of followed up this whole situation with Gina. And so this is impacting Yuri as the episode opens up. He's really upset about the fact that no matter how many of these loops, there's always sadness at the end of it. Now, granted, it seemed a little bit off to me because he's never really felt like he was impacted by what happened with SQ and what happened with Comet. He just goes on to the next storyline. It wasn't until Gina that suddenly he's like, wow, sadness everywhere. And now he's thinking back to those that it's sad. That was a little bit off for me. I don't know if that's like sort of a byproduct of how they're laying out this story from a video game, but either way, it's fine. It's the impact that this is all having upon him, this idea of endlessly looping and how it's sort of starting to mess with him. And now he's got this like extreme example in Setsu. I like seeing that sort of contrast there. She's been doing hundreds of loops, and now she's seemingly kind of being pigeonholed into one particular thing. Seemingly, Kukrushka keeps popping up in all of her loops, and she's trying to figure out any information about her, and she can't seem to figure it out, no matter how many times she does it. And so this is something that, again, is going to carry off into Yuri. But it's a cool little segment here. I guess we got a little bit of insight into Setsu as a character. Stuff that I kind of already assumed was going to be the case, that she's overly serious. She takes everything too seriously, and now he's got to kind of stop her and say, hey, don't worry about Gnosia. Just chill. Just chill. We're gonna go do fishing. We're gonna fish a Potome out of the water. We're gonna go watch a movie. She's gonna take it way too seriously. She could have just, reported that to command and this whole thing would have been solved. No, that's not how fiction works. They're supposed to have a reason for the detective to come in. I like how Yuri sort of picks up on the idea of how compassionate Setsu is. That, yeah, and technically we've always kind of seen it in Setsu's character is that in the end, as a soldier, the end result is always to save lives. And yes, technically that goes right in line with what she's told Yuri before and says again in this loop. You got to remember that this is their only loop. You can't just willy-nilly jump into this stuff. You're going to get a lot of people killed, and this is their only loop. Yeah, it's easy to disconnect yourself when you're just going to loop. I'll just do it next time. There's always next time. What about the people that you leave behind? Again, Setsu is a soldier, but I think deep down inside there, even though she does talk about logic and, trying to solve things, there's a side of her that is compassion. She wants to help other people. And it's sort of, confirmed by the fact that what does she want to go and see when she goes in the VR room? She wants to be surrounded by people. And that's what Yuri kind of picks up on, presents that to her as well. Oh, you picked this up on a previous loop. You knew that I'd want to be in a place like this. I think she does like people, and she does want to protect people. It's really cool. Again, little subtleties in Setsu's little storyline here that I think is really good. And yes, I think the core thing here is overworking herself and not taking a moment to breathe, and additionally, her desire to seek out information about Kukrushka specifically. But anyways, it kind of wraps up that whole arc with him, parting ways with her. Little hand on the window thing. Oh, doki doki. Are we setting up that Setsu's going to be the end romance question mark? I don't know. We'll see. But no, following this whole situation, they go to, I like the fact that Tomei shows up and she's like, all right, let's go get frozen. Wait, you knew? Well, yeah, I didn't know they weren't going to let us, just walk around and not have a meeting and not have something, be caused by this whole thing. You probably had them agree to us being frozen. That seemed a little bit forced there because technically before they've been able to talk it out and have people not frozen. So it's like, what? It was probably Yuri just knew that was the easiest way to get everybody to agree not to have the meeting, but that aside. Following this, though, we have Yuri stumbling over himself, trying to figure out anything about Kukrushka. I want to help Setsu out with this information, so I'm going to try to, seek out to answer that question for them, even though there's no real telling that they're going to ever run into each other again. I thought that was a little odd because, yes, technically when they went to go part ways, it kind of gave a feeling like this Setsu was a Setsu that he has run into before, because she mentioned the idea that this is another moment where I'm going to have to owe you something, which that could technically mean because she's done so many loops. You know, there's been other cases where she's run into Yuris that have helped her out, and so she's owed them a lot of things. Whatever. Anyways, he's trying to figure out this whole situation to help her out. Ends up getting himself frozen because he's being distracted. Eventually realizing that, you know, he's got to figure this stuff out on his own. I do like that he did technically go to Setsu once with whatever information he had, but that resulted in her revealing that she's a Gnosia and then apparently killing him that night. I don't know why he was shocked by that. I mean, he's talked to Gnosias before. I guess there is that element that no matter how many times he's interacted with Gnosias, if he doesn't have some sort of bond with them, he's still going to fear them. There's still going to be an element of, ah, crap, I messed up, or whatever. But all that aside, though, we have a brainstorming session with Yuri trying to figure out anything about Kukushka, how it all connects and everything, making his little flow chart, connecting all the pieces together. The known facts is that Jonas loved this person, Arya, and Kukushka apparently looks just like it. They mentioned the fact that Kukushka was bought by Jonas. I wasn't aware of that being the case, but apparently he probably found this doll and bought it. And yeah, that could be technically the thing. He finds this doll sitting in a store or whatever, or online or something like that, and goes, oh, that looks like my Arya, and buys it. And most times, this seems to be what they imply by the end of the episode, most times it's just a doll. It just legit sits there in a box all the time. But then there's some loops where suddenly she's awake, she's sentient, and she's walking around, but specifically doesn't have a voice. And the assumption here, after everything they sort of imply in this episode, is that those are the rare times that she has the consciousness of Maman inside of her. Question mark. That seems the direction it's going. Now, yeah, the other side of this whole thing is, of course, that he's tying together is the connections between SQ and Remnan specifically. Now, yes, this goes to my theories that I had back there, is that what they've implied so far is that SQ, of course, is this series of clones that was created for Maman. And there's going to be some loops where, yes, Maman's mind does go into SQ, and we experience that specifically with the one where she was harassing Remnan, which makes sense because if she had that mind inside of her, she knows who Remnan is and is going to be hassling him. Now, the thing that Yuri doesn't quite connect that is in my theory is why SQ called Remnan Papa, and my theory is that all these clones were birthed from Maman and Remnan's DNA. And thus, that would be why Maman, as SQ, would be like, Papa, I love you a lot. And that, yeah, technically that could just be, that's her role play that she plays when she's being twisted and manipulating and messing with Remnan, is calling him Papa during their little play. I don't know. But that is, of course, the connection between SQ and Remnan. Now, the big question mark that he has at the very end of his brainstorming is, how do the two of these sides connect? And that is, of course, the fact that Remnan said that Kukushka's eyes and mouth all looks just like her. So the connection there is that, so the assumption that he comes to is that this might be a case where Maman's mind is placed into Kukushka. Now here's where it kind of jumps a little bit of logic for me. And it kind of makes sense in the idea that he does, you know, jump to how Yuriko knew that Kukushka was not human. That for some reason, with the information that we've already had, everything I've stated so far is what I assume in the end. But Yuri leaps to the logic of chasing down Yuriko because she's always present in all these loops, that for some reason, her and the Hoshibune, they cyberized Maman's mind and put it into Kukushka. That's the leap of logic I don't quite get. I understand everything else and the idea that, yes, SQ is supposed to house Maman. If it fails, it might go to Kukushka. And if it succeeds, it's going to be an SQ and she's going to torment Remnan. Where do we get the logic that suddenly Yuriko at Hoshibune is now involved and they're going to move Maman's mind into Kukushka? I get the logic that ever since the berserking of Kukushka, Yuriko seems to be involved with all those loops, and thus there might be a tie-in. And again, since Yuriko technically does, you know, sound very suspicious, she is questioning Kukushka. She prodded at Yuri at some point. The leap of logic here is a little bit interesting. I get the desire to go ask her about it. Don't get me wrong there. I perfectly understand that, especially since, again, she does seem to question Kakusha from the very beginning. But still, that aside, he does run off to confront Yuriko and basically says that she's involved, the Hoshibune is involved. They cyberized Mamon's mind and gave it to Kakushka. He wants to know why. And she's like, well, I thought you were smarter than that. Yes, you are right that everything, the Gnosia, all of this, Kakushka, Mamon, all this stuff being right here is all connected, but it ain't me. It was kind of interesting, too, because at the very beginning when he first enters, she's like, oh, finally, you figured it out. Oh, you're finally here. Oh, I thought you were more intelligent than this. But then right here, he just completely fails to meet her expectations, and it seems like she is now going to want to reveal everything to him as a Gnosia. The fact that she's a Gnosia doesn't really matter to me. I think by this point, since we've so humanized the Gnosia, while there is a basic instincts within the Gnosia that does sort of twist things a little bit, I see them as the characters. There's the desire to survive that Gnosia has, but since they still technically bring upon themselves all the desires of the human themselves, whether they're Gnosia or not doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. It just matters if their eyes are red or not. But anyways, she's going to reveal everything to us. And again, I assume it's going to be that it's Levi. I think this has been something that, honestly, at this point, probably should be brought up. We've been beating around the bush for so long, and all signs seem to be pointing to the fact that Levi has to be involved somehow. We'll see. Did I miss anything? Wow, this was a yap fest of a recording. I didn't even go through it like I typically do. Interesting that Yuriko does say that she is a fugitive, so that could play into the idea of maybe potentially Levi having grabbed Yuriko. Is this ship potentially Hoshibune? Was Levi the AI of Hoshibune, and both of them are running away? Are they trying out new things here now? Again, is that whole ritual the Gnosia do where they get sucked in that hole, is that what the Hoshibune was doing with the whole cyberization? Because it looked similar in Gina's past. There's a lot of these little things in my brain that are starting to now connect right here. Like I said back there, was the Gnosia doing the same ritual for cyberizing that the Hoshibune were doing? We'll see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below. Until next time, y'all take care.